actually going into the house.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I think it's 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
so got my donut. Everybody seems to have their donut.
Yeah,
You know? So, I don't know if everybody knows everybody. Maybe we'll just go around the room real quick and just introduce ourselves.
Dennis Libby, full disclosure, I'm an appointed Orono Planning Commissioner in my third and last full term. And this is my wife Ruby, who can introduce herself, but I thought I would.
I'm Ruby retired.
Ruby retired. I like that.
Retired. That's not a bad thing to have.
It sounds like a good, like, you should have it on the back of your shirt.
So lucky. Kelly Grady, my husband is a long-life firefighter, and I have been working to make sure that their service is continued and recognized for the last year or so.
Sandy Whistler. What else did I always say? I don't have a cool moniker though. Yeah.
Jim Walker.
All right. So anyways, welcome to Coffee with the Mayor.
This is part of my question, so I made little handouts.
Okay.
But I don't know how the first moment, so.
Okay. Go.
Oh, should I go?
Sure.
So my questions is, so this little packet I put together, because numbers sometimes are hard to get over, and so the very back page is the capital improvement for 2022. The next, second from back is 2023, and then the 2024 capital improvement plans.
Okay.
I did just specific to the fire department that I highlighted, but also just to note the huge increase in how expensive everything's, how much is in this capital improvement plan from 2022 to 2024. It just doesn't, and then the second page of the packet is from the Orono Fire Needs Assessment, and it's specific to what the estimate was if there's no people that are gonna, no other cities that join in. The total estimated cost was 1.6 million, including the capital improvement plans. And then the very first page is the 2024 budget, which it's quite off from what was estimated. So I guess the gist of my question is, how much is the fire department going to cost? And I don't say this from a safety standpoint. I'm a current registered nurse license. I'm all about safety, but I don't have a handle at all on what this fire department actually has cost and will cost.
Well, that's a very broad question. So, do you have any more specific questions than that, or?
Well, maybe let's just do 2024. Like, why is the estimate all in 1.6 and we're already at 2.5? I mean, it's not really that broad a question. It's there was no public input, and it's millions of dollars. And I don't have I don't know how much, you don't have, there's no data on what it's going to cost.
What public input do you think that you don't have or that you would need to have
for
a fire department or a police department or a public works department? Just explain to me more of that.
Like holding some public forums and saying, here's what we're thinking of doing, here's the pros, here's the cons, it's going to cost this, what do you all think? And then you can make a decision whether or not you agree with the public input or not. But there wasn't any forum to have a public input.
Well, I will say you're wrong about that. We've been talking about this for 6 years. If you go to the Laker Pioneer, 6 years ago, actually 6.5 years ago, it was actually in the paper that we were talking to Long Lake about a contract that was coming up that we wanted to make some changes to. Okay?
How does that address the public forum?
What city are you from again?
I'm sorry, my husband's a long-time firefighter, and you're trying to burn down his fire department, and I have deep concerns about the safety of this community as well. So you can keep saying all of that stuff and trying to discredit me because I know what I'm talking about, but it doesn't make it any less validating the things that I bring to the table, the legitimate concerns that I'm bringing to the table. This woman has asked you 2 questions that you've deflected on in regards to budget and also in regards to citizen input, and you are deflecting completely. So if you could answer her questions about the budget, if you could answer her questions about why you haven't had a public forum.
Okay, let's get back to the questions about the public forum.
And what city are you from? You haven't answered the question. What city are you from?
I live in Long Lake, and I am a member of this community, and I am deeply
wanted to make sure
concerned
we
about
understand
your authoritarian
what
regime.
activist area you're from.
I live in this community, sir.
And you're an
Okay, wait. Let's get back. Let's not have a whole hour to spend on these.
100%.
This is kind of crazy. All I want to know is, right from this moment forward, what is, like, so the capital improvement plans were not reflective year to year on the 2022 to 2023 to 2024. None of that was like actually accurate.
What's amazing,
So my question is, how much
let's
is it
go
gonna
look at
cost?
the Long Lake Fire CIP.
I don't
capital
care about
improvement.
that.
But it actually is relevant. It is relevant.
They gave a refund of
You can cherry pick
$32,000.
the information you want to ask about, but I'm going to talk about the entire package, okay? So you can cherry pick all you want.
It's 2024.
Okay,
That's
well-
what I'm gonna cherry pick. Address that.
Like I said, you're just going to cherry pick information. I'm just going to go back to where the whole place started. And back to the problem where all this started was 6 years ago, so about 6.5 years ago. It's actually documented in the Laker Pioneer as an article that they said that we met with Long Lake on a very easy basis 6.5 years ago and said, the contract's coming up, we'd like to make a few changes. And the changes are, with our 87%, and your 7%, because Medina has 6%, that we would like to change the contract, but we're actually in control of doing stuff because we have a HR department, we have a finance department, we can manage these things, but I know you don't want to hear this. But this is part of the conversation. If you want to come and just cherry pick something, and you want me to give you an answer, you're going to have to listen to my entire answer, because that's part of the equation, okay? Long Lake has failed. Long Lake has failed. Oh, just going back 6 years ago, look at their CIP and what they have. They have nothing. Everything has failed.
How much has Lauren
You don't
contributed
have
to
the
the
floor.
CIP
You don't have the floor.
for the last 10 years?
Miss Activist from Long Lake, you don't have the floor.
I'm not an activist,
You
I'm
are
a
an
fire
activist.
wife.
You are a keyboard warrior.
Okay, let's not
Okay.
digress. Please.
So 6.5 years ago, you go look back at that. That's how the conversation starts. We've been having the same conversation with Long Lake for 6.5 years. What we have dug up is everything in Long Lake, all their equipment, all of their stuff has been completely outdated. It all needs to be replaced. So we have talked to them for 6.5 years about, we'd like to change the contract. And they've just said no. And we gave them a number of options. We can change the contract, but we're just kind of in control of it because it is coming due. So we'd like to make those changes. But we need some answers from you. And from our citizen standpoint, make sure they're protected from Orono perspective. If we can't get answers, we're going to start putting the building blocks in place over time to have a Orono fire department, and we will just bring our services in-house. Because we have that ability to do that. Our residents are going to be better protected by bringing our services in-house, because we will make sure that there actually is a true capital improvement plan that funds everything correctly over time, just like we do with police. Go to our police CIP. How much money is in there? Do you know? Do you have any perspective?
I'm not.
Do you have any perspective on the budget on our police?
It's highly relevant.
It's highly relevant. Do you have any perspective on our public works?
I need copies of this stuff.
Do you have perspective on our public works and all the stuff that we have on our CIP for public works as well?
I know only.
Do you have perspective? Do you know the budget? You have no perspective is what's really going on. You're trying to cherry pick something without any knowledge. And when we have knowledge, and you need to have a capital improvement plan to actually fund stuff. And we have all that for police, for public works, for staff. And as we're going, we found out a lot of stuff from Long Lake on the failures of the city council to adequately protect the citizens of Orono by having the right equipment, by having all the right stuff that they need to have, the stuff that they have to wear, all that kind of stuff. They have failed in that. In fact, we have known that we've had bad response times in Navarre for a long time now, and they have still failed when they have that area to adequately protect our residents. And so we have now, as we found all this stuff out, adequately funded things correctly with all the things we know we need to have, adequately protected it with the type of personnel, as we know things are going on, that the world has changed and the population is getting older, because I'm the youngest of the boomers, and I'm 60. And so 70% of our calls are medical. And so we need to be able to have good response times, and that is what we have now provided that Long Lake has not provided, and when they knew that there was a problem, they still have not provided that until we took over. And so adequately enough, from 6.5 years ago of having these conversations, we've learned a lot about what the city council has failed at Long Lake to do. And so now we are the ones, we will protect our citizens, and that's what we have done.
If I could just interject, I don't think you're being as professional as you should be. As a business executive, I would hope that we can have a civil discussion. Sandy asked two very basic questions. Why is the cost running so far ahead of the projections? And why weren't there, subsequent to the 6-year history you talked about, at least an open hearing for the citizens to be able to voice their concerns, understanding that the budget didn't seem big enough to handle all the needs that were going to come down the street. The budget is out of budget. And what does the city plan to do to get it back in budget other than go to the tax levy?
Well, first of all, I will say that everything is already in our budget, fully funded. So you're incorrect about not having it funded correctly and needing to go to the levy. We are fully funded for the fire department. Even in a year and a half, it's fully funded. And you will notice, too, that Long Lake has ramped up their costs from the city council dramatically as they have realized that we're correct. They have not, the city council has not provided enough funds to make sure it's funded correctly. So they have ramped up their costs significantly over the last few years, only because we dug in and found the problems that were there. And when we find there's problems in Orono, we say we can do better. And so we are. Because the first thing we need is public safety. And as a resident, you should be ecstatic and dancing in the streets that somebody has found out that there was shortcomings and that we have remedied the situation.
But to address the question of why there couldn't have been at least a public hearing so that people understood the dynamics of it.
Well, you're wrong about that too. We've been talking about this for 6 years. Maybe you've missed 6 years of conversations at the city council and the different forums that we've had about this. So you're wrong about that as well. But we also don't come to you and say, I know I'm elected, but what kind of police service would you like? We don't go out and ask you. 8 years ago,
You asked about
we
parks.
said, activists, what did you want?
You asked about parks.
I asked about parks.
You ask about, you hold public hearings about parks. You have
We've had-
listening sessions about parks.
Well, you've probably
This is
missed
the most
6 years
significant
of-
public safety change that Orono has had in recent times. And you've had 3, I think, listening sessions about Holbrook Park, or Hackberry Park, excuse me.
So the capital improvement plan for public works, do you feel that that is accurately reflected in the capital improvement plans?
We have our public works, we have our police, we have our staff, we have inspections. Everything is adequately in place for our capital improvement for all our divisions.
So on the 2022 plan, the last plan, there are a lot of zeros in your capital improvement plan. If you look at the last page, that's straight from the city website. This isn't something I just made my own little tablets. There's a lot of zeros in there. I'm guessing they have the final number be equal, and like your numbers just don't make sense. I would be fine if I knew how much it was going to cost. I don't have any sense of what it's actually going to cost. The estimate.
You know, Sandy, you have come here over and over and over with the same questions and the same statements. You have met with the finance people here. You have had conversations with people here at the city over and over. Do you not have the answers from them yet, that you're coming here to ask me the same questions over and over?
Of course I don't have the answers, otherwise I wouldn't have bothered to do this.
Okay, well, obviously you've been having these conversations for a really long time, and you seem to have an agenda that you consistently come to here. So I'm gonna move on to a different question from somebody else.
How about just why?
Because I've already talked about all this, and I appreciate your activism coming here constantly and badgering me about these same issues, and in the city council, and staff at the same time. So I think if you want more answers about that, feel free to call our finance department through Adam, and they will answer whatever questions you have, because they have all those at their fingertips.
What is your reference point? What is your reference point? The
Reference
first
point
time
of
I
what?
ever spoke
Reference
at the
point.
city council was 2 weeks ago when I actually brought this, and I thought, I'm gonna ask him at the coffee to give me a response on why it's $1 million more.
Sandy, you have
than
talked
this.
many times to the
So
staff.
why is it
do
$1
you,
million
if you don't have an answer, you want me to walk you back there right now?
But you're up
You
for
will meet
election,
with
sir.
our
They're
finance
not up
people.
for election. She's
Absolutely.
asking you for
I'll
answers.
walk you back there. Go get your questions answered about finance, because I
You're
know
the
you've
mayor
talked
of
to
our
them
city.
many times.
You're the mayor of
And you come here as an activist,
How do I
and because you're
have
constantly asking the same questions
But
over and
because I
over,
don't have
month
answers.
in and month out.
I don't have
And it's
answers.
over and over the same questions that we answer. I'll bring you back to the finance
I'll make it
department.
super simple. How much is the fire department actually going to cost?
Well, it's all in the budget right now. So just look at the budget. Exactly, that's
So you're saying.
You don't know
the
the
budget
number?
that's in there today that we already talked about, that's going in for 2025, okay? The budget for 2026 will be pretty close to the same budget that it is for 2025
So is
that we're
this
talking
capital
about.
improvement, which capital improvement plan is actually accurate? Because none of these numbers,
Well-
it goes from zero, estimate
You have-
0
have-
to 755 to 1.4
Well,
million.
we
like,
just
it
had our
doesn't-
preliminary budget conversation last month. It had all the numbers in there, all of them. I will be glad to walk you back to the finance department right now to print, if you want to print off
So-
a copy of that.
So how do
Would you like to
how
do
do
that?
you-
Because that will get everything
How
answered
do
for
you
you.
know, how can I rely when the fire assessment report gave an estimate with no other cities involved at $1.6 million, and it's 800,000 more than that, and it's
Well,
pushing
you're
2 million more than it
you're-
used to cost.
You know, are you adding up all the budget and the CIPs? I mean, what numbers are you all adding up?
It's on the
Because
sheet, I made it very clear.
you
It's
got scribbles all over this
1.437,
thing.
oh, it's
You're
highlighted, that's so rude.
Okay,
I'm not sure it's
I think.
Sir, you're the mayor of the
constantly
city.
ask me about these
Why do you
numbers.
not know
I'm
these
having this
numbers?
Conversation about it. I will bring you to the finance department if you want to get those answers.
Bring 'em
Okay?
in.
If you don't want to go there, that's okay. But Maggie is our finance person. You can go to Adam and say, can I meet with Maggie? She will answer all those questions. I know I've offered you that before, but you continue to come to me
'Cause you're the
to
mayor.
complain about stuff, okay? But I will bring you back there to get you answers if you want them. Do you want to do that? I'll go right now.
Oh my God.
That's very kind of you, always.
If the answer is no,
I
then after
absolutely,
coffee.
yes, we'll do it at 10:05.
Okay, okay.
And I still haven't gotten an answer on why it costs so much more than the estimate. And they're not gonna be able to tell me that.
Well,
I'm
absolutely,
asking them
that
to-
Adam will be able to have that conversation
The
with
why.
you. Because he's running he runs the city, okay? And if you have specific questions, we can get answers to it, but very generalized questions are different.
What are you
different
hearing as a
from-
generalized question?
Well, I'm at 10:05, if you want to go back there,
10:05,
you,
is that
you,
even?
at
Yeah,
10:05,
at
you
10:05,
said
you
you go
can ask
back
the
there.
general
At 10:05,
questions.
I'll bring you back there and you can get all your finance questions answered that you need.
How much more do you really need than the person you just asked the question of to offer you generously an opportunity to talk to the most authoritative resources, the people who work with the numbers on a day-to-day basis? They actually have a role to play in not only city management, but in budgetary quantification. So you can get your answers.
So you're
Absolutely,
confident.
and I'm confident that you can go there because I deal with staff here all the time as a planning commissioner. They're generous, they're open, they're public, they're convivial, and they will give you all the numbers that you're pressuring the mayor now, who is not an expert in every single area. And he's the highest level executive elected leader in the city. It's an overview. He has to partially run the city with the city manager. We have staff who are specifically trained, hired, vetted, and engaged in giving information not only to the executive city council, but to the public. And he's just offered you that. And I don't really know why, unless you're just here to be adversarial, like this person over here, instead of just really asking questions. She comes here at every meeting and she has an adversarial.
I'm not here every, this
We
is
have a
the second
every
coffee I've
time
ever
I've been
attended,
here
sir.
that you,
So
I'll
please.
qualify that. Every time I've been here that you've been here,
Twice.
Okay,
And council meetings that you've done.
council meetings, you come with an
council meetings.
adversarial attitude, not an attitude.
I'm sorry, are you talking to me or are you talking to the mayor, sir?
I'm talking
Because
to
I'm
you.
not an elected official, so I can come here and I can say facts and I can ask
And
questions, but I'm not attacking residents.
Absolutely, but let me finish.
Honest to God.
Let me finish.
I agree that you come here every time and harass me on the
Been
same
here
questions
twice.
over and over, like, it's like the definition of insanity. You come here, ask the same questions over and over, expecting something. I'm not sure what you're looking for. That's why I would bring you in and get you with the people that do the finance, sit down with them. Because what I will tell you, as a general perspective, like Mr. Libby said, all of our stuff is completely without increasing our tax rate. One dime and we're fully funded. There's no city in Hennepin County that can make that claim. We are the only one. Isn't Barbara laughs over here? She should be the most excited person in Orono because she's got a fully funded city. We lead the way. We show how it can be done. We're the only ones in Hennepin County that can make that claim. And it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's amazing that you have not held a public forum for your citizens to be able to have an open dialogue. It is amazing that you have not engaged the firefighters in this conversation. It is amazing that you don't provide this woman with a budget. That is amazing. It is amazing that you are still up for election, sir, when you can't provide a budget, a general budget number, when you can't provide any sort of forum for citizens. She's coming here and asking you these things. That's amazing. That is amazing.
Do you guys realize how insane you both sound?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
There's no
it's
decorum
so
here. What's
bizarre.
going on?
I have keyboard warriors here that come and are activists.
You're
This
not
is what
here.
this is what
So many
happens.
meetings.
This is what
She's not even listening to his dialogue.
I am listening.
You come here, you do the same thing.
I asked a question.
You
how much
come
the garbage
over and
costs.
over and over and ask the same questions. You come to the council meetings, ask the same questions over and
I've
over.
come to
So
multiple council
I will,
meetings. I've
that's why I'm gonna bring you to
spoken
the finance department, and you can have all your questions answered that you don't understand, because I know you've talked to them before. So for some reason, if you've talked to them and you don't understand, but you
I don't
ask
have
me the
a
same
lie.
questions,
I don't have a lie.
it's very strange.
I
It's
don't
very
have a
strange to me.
lie.
So I will take care of it and solve that problem by bringing you to the finance department with Adam, and you can ask, and I will be glad to leave you, and you can ask all the questions you need.
I don't have a lie. Will you have a lie?
What is the why of what?
That the estimate was $1.6 million and it's 2.4.
Well, Adam in the finance department will be able to answer that question. He will know the why, yep. He will be able to answer those questions for you, yep.
And where did the balance?
Because the staff is the one who comes up with, the city council does not come up with the estimates, the staff comes up with this stuff in consultation, and as we do a budget, and that's why we started doing the budget in April, May, June, July, August, because it's a moving entity in the budget, because they're constantly qualifying things, what we need, and then we find out with all the failures that the city council has provided us, that we may have to do more to make sure we are adequately protected, but still within our budget and fully funded without increasing our tax rate, which is amazing. No other city can claim that in Hennepin County.
So I just want to understand this because from managing a household budget that, money has to come from someplace. So I understand our millage rate has not changed, but what about that our tax rate must, the values of properties have changed. So how does that compare to other communities?
That's a county authority.
The county establishes the value of your home. We have no control on that.
Okay, but because our overall taxes, the millage hasn't changed, but
Correct.
but what it costs people out of their budgets has changed.
Well, I guess there's a number of ways to be able to answer that question, but one of them is first of all, what we've done is by all the different code changes that we've done, we made it much easier for people to come in and renovate their house, fix their house, tear down the $1 million house, build a $5 million house, which is constantly going on. We've had people that have made it easier to subdivide, to be able to make, when they have 3 acres, they can do 3 1-acre spots in a 1-acre zone. So we've made it easier for people to expand the tax base, to be able to do what we found 8 years ago was not being provided in Orono, when we had 0 roads budget. We were running out of money for water and sewer to fix everything. We had no parks budget. The CIP was wholly inadequate, and we said we can do better, and we will do it without increasing the tax rate by expanding our tax base and everything else, and fully fund everything. And that's what we have done. 100% we have done. So if your house was $500,000 and today it's $600,000, what you've paid additional is just that extra $100,000 at the same tax rate.
No, of course, I understand.
But we've expanded, there's probably additional, I think somebody told me like 2 or 3% expansion in Orono every year of subdividings, new houses, bigger houses, all that kind of stuff that's going on. So
the
with
overall
that,
tax revenue has greatly increased, and the budget has greatly, so taxes.
roughly inflation issues, yes. Because we have the same thing with staff salaries. I mean, I think we have unions. We have 3 unions in the city, could be 4. But 85–90% of our costs are people in the city, okay? So I think on average our costs with our people have gone up 3 or 4 or 5% every single year because of unions, increases in salaries, all that kind of stuff. And that's an inflation issue. The same thing goes with houses, with your food, and everything else. And things have to get paid for. You could say, okay, well let's just take that $1 million from roads and let's just reduce our tax levy, but we wouldn't have any roads. So roads just don't get done. You just don't sprinkle fairy dust on your roads and get it done. It's got to cost from somewhere. You can be in Long Lake. Long Lake comes up to you and says, I'm going to do your road, but you're going to have to write a check for $20,000. That's what they do over there. Or they do franchise fees. And they say, we're just going to tuck fees into your water bill to do other stuff. You can take that approach. We've decided to take the other approach, that we're going to fund everything in our budget because we can anticipate functional obsolescence. Roads deteriorate over time. Water and sewer deteriorate all the time. All the 60 vehicles that we have in Orono for all the different services that we provide deteriorate over time. And so because we can know that that's going to happen with functional obsolescence, we can budget for that. And we have, because that's the smart thing to do. That's what I do in my business, and I'm in the commercial real estate business, whether it's roofs, parking lots, and everything stuff. You have to budget for things that are going to wear out. And that's what we've done, and that's what was not done when I got in office, that I said we will take care of without increasing our tax rate. And that's what we have done.
And the other thing I heard this morning that's concerning to me is I came to city council meeting when the former fire chief of Long Lake gave his proposal. And at that time, it was very clear that there were no failings in the service level that we were receiving from the Long Lake Fire Department. But yet this morning I heard that there have been were failures in that. So it seems like
I'm not familiar with who you're talking about, so I don't recall this conversation or something.
It was at the city council meeting when the mayor, the new fire chief came.
Yeah, I was at that council meeting as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember, but we have a wonderful reference point because everything is on video.
That's right.
Maybe I'll look at that again. And what was your comment again? There was no mention by the fire chief about shortcomings of their performance or funding or?
About shortcomings, that our service levels were at the rural area. We had met the metrics for the service levels for the.
But we're not in a rural area, that's the problem. We are not.
We think about it as a rural
area. We
area.
might have a mental think that we're the rural, but we are not a rural. Go to Nevada, you consider that a rural area? I do not consider that a rural area. And that's where we found out the shortcomings really were happening.
But she's bringing up a good point, that there were never any formal concerns brought from this council or any city about response times to Long Lake Fire when James Van Isle was the chief. There were not concerns brought forth from this council. So to her point is why, and to even Sandy's point over here, why is such a significant change being made at a significant cost to taxpayers when there wasn't a service issue?
Well, there actually is no significant change. We still have fire service. We're not going from no fire service to fire service.
Okay.
We're having, what's this fire service? What we have found is that they inadequately, which I talked earlier, funded everything correctly. They've admitted they've underfunded.
I don't think that's true.
They've underfunded the fire department.
That's not true.
They have publicly said that.
As
an activist, I know you don't want to hear that.
But also, Orono has, for over the last decade, repeatedly denied voted down capital improvement spending for the Long Lake Fire Department. That is well documented, sir. And so you are partially responsible for that.
If they need, we will fund it. But what Long Lake has decided to do and tell us, which was a problem, is that contrary to reality, they said to us, if you approve a CIP, you've approved the purchase. And that's not correct, but that's the tack that they have taken.
But when these things were brought to council for vote, council voted it down.
Let him finish.
So I got 1 minute left. and I have to
No,
go, so
I'm done with you.
Is there any other questions
We were done a long
besides?
time ago.
Okay.
I know that Libby said, did you guys have any other questions?
No, but I wanted to open the floor to this gentleman because he asked a question of you and he didn't get a chance to finish that I thought was viable. And it was a question that I wanted to ask you because I actually did have a couple of questions.
Okay.
But can you finish your question, please?
You go ahead.
It's, but no, yours is budgetary. And I thought it was important. I'd like to have you ask that.
How is the city going to handle the $600,000 to $800,000 shortfall in a transfer of funds within the budget?
I'm not familiar with what shortfall you're referring to.
Well, the fire budget is running ahead by $800,000 of projections.
I'm not familiar with that problem. Everything is funded within our budget, and our tax rate has not changed. Everything is 100% funded. So whatever number you think we have a shortfall on is not correct. So I'll go back now, Mr. Libby.
I have one question. And I'm asking a question about something I really kind of already know the answer, but I would love to hear the mayor share this with myself and crew.
Okay.
When strategic planning economically was brought to the table, having to do with a number of these projects that it seems like we have a contingent of citizens who justifiably have the right and they have the concern about some of these budgetary, quote, overages. But there was a bonding issue that I watched very, very closely. You and I never really talked about it until it was actually done. But there was a timing that was opportune because a significant amount of funding was made available through the bonding issue at an interest rate that we couldn't get right now. Any municipality could not get. So I think it's important for you to share to the public who has a need to know about some of these positive aspects that put you into a state where you could be fully funded. And if it involved borrowing or debt service or any cost, that is the lowest possible cost conceivable in the recent economic history of the country, as far as I know, because you can't borrow money for 1% anymore for the entire term in the life of a debt service. Can you just briefly, quick, before you have to go?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because it's an amazing story that we have done for Orono. Over the years, we also said that, which goes into the same theme of you bond for long-term facilities. You don't borrow money for roads. You don't borrow money for water and sewer, for things that you can anticipate. And so little by little over the years, over 8 years as I've been mayor, we have paid off all the debt of the short-term borrowing issues that you shouldn't be borrowing for, to be able to then bring us and make good long-term decisions for facilities, which we did for our public works. Because we know that our current public works facility, which was built 30 some odd years ago, was wholly inadequate in terms of size at this point. We have a parks department, we have water, sewer, we have all this kind of stuff going on that we didn't have before. We have a fleet maintenance division that would take care of all of our vehicles that we didn't have before, that we started a number of years ago to keep all our residents in ship-top shape in terms of protected. And so we're always able to fix our own stuff. And so we found a piece of ground that we had, bought a piece of ground from the state, from extra land that they had from the bypass that went through. And we added that together, and we have now a brand new 65,000 square foot facility, which is about double what we had. So we have room for growth inside of that. And then for the future, we have enough land that we have designed a potential expansion if we ever need it for another 25,000 square feet if it's ever needed in the future. And without ever increasing our borrowing, because all the stuff we paid off, we just rolled right into that without any additional cost. And now we're set for probably 100+ years, but into the next century without any problem. And being able to take care of all the things that nobody thought of 35 years ago that we are doing today with our expanded public works department, our parks department, and our fleet maintenance division. So we borrowed that at 1.9%. We knew the interest rates were going to be going up, so we borrowed it early. And within, I think 90 days of after doing that, the interest rates tripled. So at that 1.9% would be probably 6% today, which means you pay 3 times as much if you had to do it today. So we made sure we took care of the owner resident, took care of them very, very well for the long-term future of Orono and our facility needs. So that we are, again, with all within the tax rate, didn't have to raise any levy, didn't have to do anything to provide for that.
So that's the 17 million that you built the public
Yes.
work and used part of it for fire?
Yep,
And what's the term on that debt?
30 years, 1.9%. It's an amazing, amazing thing that we took care of. And I've got a lot of people say we'll never get enough credit for pulling that one off and knowing what was coming, that we took care of it. But
I've seen the building, you know, we took up an invitation to go there tour it, and having been a real estate broker for 35 years in a lot of the large-scale commercial buildings, I can tell you that this is one of the most 21st century advanced technology buildings that I've seen built, especially for these kind of purposes, because it has to be so diversified in its core value that it gives back to the community, but now it services all the fleets of everything in-house.
I think
We don't go to local gas stations and local services anymore, not that I don't like to service and give revenue back to local business.
So with that said, you guys, if you want to stay, I've got to go. I got to meet with you for a moment in the back. I will come back and grab you, and I'll bring you.
How is it possible that you can speak in such great detail about those numbers, but you can't answer her very detailed question as well?
Let's go back.
The fact that you pick and choose the numbers that you speak to citizens about is disturbing.
Okay.
If I was a drinker, I'd be starting now.
That's why I haven't had an alcoholic drink since 1991.
Well, I think there was some evasiveness, two basic questions for sure. I didn't hear it.
Well, now you got a chance to get a empirical answer. You can go and have the people who do the numbers, make the numbers, and provide the numbers for the public under obligation as public servants. There's never a reason why you can't come to your own community staff and ask them questions and get the empirical answers.
Absolutely, and it's the why.
And
It's
so
the why.
if there's a goal involved,
It's the why.
okay, and
The why.
again, I'm not really quite sure, and I'm just a volunteer appointed public official, but often when we have citizenry come here and they have a need, primarily when we sit as the planning commission, we're here to take care of the people's business. We have an agenda, we follow that. There are people who are citizens that come and have a specific need. They've already stepped through the process with the staff of making applications for building a home or modifying a home. Sometimes they're very small issues, like a deck. If they fall into our ordinance and our code, and the staff can't deal with an answer, then they send it to the planning commission. But we always fall back on the verse and chapter and the Bible of the metrics that are established either as the 2040 comprehensive plan or what the staff provides. You go to the staff first. You don't have to go to a planning commission to
I understand that, but even referencing the 2040 comprehensive plan, like we used to live in a different city, and that 2040 comprehensive plan, that gets worked on in 2018. So like it's so far behind, there's such a big lag time. I appreciate a comprehensive plan because that's the best spitball against a wall, but it's still 22 years out that you're doing a comprehensive plan. My question, and I don't know how I became an activist, because the first time I spoke at the city council meeting was 2 weeks ago, but apparently now I'm an activist. I wanted to know why. All I wanted, I thought that it was wrong to not have public input on whether or not we should have a fire department. I've talked to, I think his name is David, somebody from the state of the Minnesota Department of Fire. Like the request to have a fire department was in January of 2022, we hired a fire chief without having a fire department in December of 2022. The council votes back it up a little, September to form a fire department, hiring a fire department chief in 2022 before a fire department in September they said they wanted to exist, and then have a fire chief write a report whether or not a fire department should exist, reeks of have somebody, a third party, even if it's a third party you're having a fire chief write a report whether or not a fire department should exist. Here's a big shocker. He said, yes, we should have a fire department. I mean, he's got a vested interest in his job. I wanted to find out from that fire department report of $1.6 million, what, you know, why is it almost $1,800,000 over the guess in this 2024 year? And instead of getting an answer, I got called an activist and like all this inflammatory fluff.
What's the core purpose of your agenda? I mean, are you answering questions for you personally? Are you doing this as an advocate for your citizenry and the rest of them?
I'm doing it because Sandy Whistler would like to know how much the Orono
Yes, I'm just asking, so now you've answered my question.
I mean, I don't even know how I became an activist.
Many of us have the same concern.
What?
Many of us have the same concern.
Well,
It's
and
not
I
the
respect
same.
that.
Yeah.
You know, again, I take my planning commissioner hat off, even though I've mentioned the role a couple times, but I was intimately involved in inviting public citizens to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan open houses. I mean, I really did an outreach. I made phone calls.
That's right. It's difficult to
I made
make
sure there were
20
articles and stuff. And you know, the thing that was disappointing is enthusiastic as a lot of the people were that came here, even though the public was well informed in newspaper articles and ads and my canvassing and a number of other people's canvassing, we only had about 8 or 10 of the entire population of the city at the time come to the open house. Those people were proactive. They kind of liked what they saw, but they were able to give public input to the staff, the people over here involved with the Planning Commission, plus the people who were engaged by the city like me as volunteers to try to focus on a new plan for another 20 years of how the city was going to be run. But we had very, very little public participation. I was so
I can
disappointed.
understand that, but that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about.
It does, because it sounds like your objection, the biggest problem that you have, is that there was not offered to the public enough avenue or opportunity to have public input on these budgetary expenditures.
It's a two-pronged thing. I would like to be informed. I mean, I just look at the numbers from these comprehensive plans. There's no continuity from 2022 to 2023
I know, but you're going to believe this and beat it to death
Well,
until
do
you
you
go
wanna-
back
do you
and
wanna
look
hear
at the real numbers.
No, these are from the city.
I know,
warrant.
but
They're
I've seen you,
real numbers.
I see you, and the mayor is right. I've seen you bring these up both at city council meetings and at these other meetings.
I don't understand why it's plural. I spoke one time in my entire life in front of the city council, which was 2 weeks ago, and I brought up some of these numbers. Yes, and I've come to coffees before, and he promised me in the May coffee that fancy little flyer they were going to put on the city, and I'm sure this, if this was taped in this coffee, I said specifically, are there going to be the budget numbers in that flyer? I understand you don't have a lot of pages, but now this one's going to be, whatever, 4 pages on the fire, and he said, yes, the numbers will be in there. They weren't, so then I'm
Well,
like,
some of
okay,
these
well, now I'm
metrics
gonna
were
do a
just
little
done. I don't know if you heard him say this, but from a staff standpoint, an administrative staff, some of these numbers were just recently equated and balanced and done. And so
Maybe
he's-
this is
he's-
2022, 2023, 2024, 2024 budget.
But he's just offered you access to metrics and empirical data that isn't on the website yet, that probably is not available.
Sure, it'd be great to
for
see
your-
2025.
That's what I'm saying, you know, if you're not happy with that kind of offer and that kind of access to the public information, there has to be some other kind of agenda. And are you trying
Okay,
to...
did you not hear me that at 10:05 I'm happy to go back to meet with him?
Yeah,
I don't understand
Why
this.
don't
I
you
don't understand why it's so inflammatory.
why don't you just look forward to that? And I'm sorry, I'm not really meaning to question your motive and your intent, but I
But you
needed
did.
to ask because it's not transparent, it's not real clear to me what your ultimate goal is, what you really want to accomplish. Are you suspicious of the fact that these are spurious numbers, that there's some kind of backroom, transitional aspects of the city running it, or somebody's skimming money? Why are you so suspicious about this? I don't really understand.
Well, I mean, if you want to look at my little sheet, all these numbers don't even flow year to year.
Well, granted, and that's why I wanted him to finish one of his questions, because he had a very valid question that I wanted to ask, and it was in the quantifiable disparities that he had noticed, which I think are very valid. I wanted to have him get a chance to ask the mayor, and he got interrupted, and we wanted to,
Well,
bifurcate it off to something totally
No,
different.
he did answer. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. The mayor answered that
No,
question.
he didn't even finish his question. He got stopped. Anyway, so I wish we could step back because I'd like to hear the rest of the question. because it was a good question. It was one that I also asked, and that's why we show up. I mean, that's why we come.
As a taxpayer, it just concerns me greatly how much the numbers fluctuate from budget to budget. Now, I understand that it's budget and you refine things and you have new information comes in, but when you look at in like 2023, it says that the 25 plan is going to be 6 million, and then in 2024 it's going to be 7 million, but there's one that's even greater than that. If you're going from.
There's plenty of them. Sandy, do you want to come in?
Oh, no, finish this conversation first.
So you're concerned that this is going to have some type of a filter down effect to budgetary costs of property taxes? Is that where your concern is? But if these numbers don't,
I'm not concerned about
well,
that.
if these numbers don't concur, then what is your worry? What's your concern? If the numbers don't match and you're legitimately correct, and we find out after going back and talking to staff and the people who are doing the numbers, if in fact there are errors in there, then what's ultimately cause and effect? What's your really current concern? What's the effect that really bothers you? That's kind of what I'm curious about.
I think I'm concerned about the blooming size of the Orono, city employment and the budget impact of that. And it's easy because property values have increased, that our tax base has greatly increased, so our budget has greatly increased. So that's what I'm concerned about.
Have you seen the assessor yet? Have they come to your front door and asked to look at your property? The county engaged contract assessor?
I don't know why you go on these tangents.
Yeah.
She just said something very specific, and then you're trying to avoid
Because
down
she
to
made a
personal.
blanket statement about something that I'm concerned that maybe she doesn't have all the facts or the information on. The taxes and the property taxes we pay are more guided and affected by the state of Minnesota, where the property taxes go anyway. The counties and the cities are nothing more than collection agencies for the state. I'm a former independent fee appraiser, so I'm familiar with this structure. And the assessor that I asked you about showed up at my door yesterday. We had a very convivial conversation. We talked about his role and what he does, and how ultimately, when he looked at my house, that I paid a little over $200,000 for 22 years ago, could likely be worth $1,350,000, a value that has not yet reached the state and county assessing value. So I'm kind of hearing in your statement that these numbers that don't equate, that you're questioning, that they're going to have a net cause and effect to raise your property taxes. It's going to be a bill that you're going to have to pay because the city paid money for other facilities and other things that they didn't ask the public about. But I'm telling you that these values that they're establishing right now still probably aren't going to be very accurate from a standpoint of what our properties are worth. You're thinking these costs are going to filter through somehow to raise our taxes. And I think that you need to educate yourself a little more and look at how the cause and effect of assessment and
So I totally understand that. I'm concerned about the overall dollar increase in city budget.
It went from roughly $1 million
she's
to $20 million.
She's going to go right now, and you two should communicate, because I'm not going to go back and talk to staff, you are. And I think that's a golden opportunity. I'd be on my feet and back there to go and talk to her.
Please, I found the city very receptive to answer any questions. It's, sure, I'll take a guided tour back, but I'm just so frustrated that the overall budget went for the entire city to, like the capital improvement plan, to roughly $1 million, and all of a sudden it's 8 to 20 million. Like, that is what I'm trying to get answers to. Hey, that's a almost 2,000% increase on some years. That's it.
I guess I can't answer your question because I'm not the one
I
with
understand.
my thumb up on
You were asking
the America data. They're waiting back there, the mayor set it up, so
Bated
we're going to
breath.
talk to them. I don't know how long it's been since you went back and talked to them, but they have just recently had executive staff meeting with the city manager and the budgetary staff recently, and they have numbers that maybe now, if you go and review them with this opportunity, will make more sense. Maybe they won't be these broad disparities. Maybe they'll be worse. I don't know. I hope not. But you know, I remember when we had other administrations here. I mean, I've lived here, the two of us have lived here long enough to be through 3 administrations. And I played a role of kind of coming up, speaking up and standing up and coming to city council meetings as an advocate for my neighborhood and my neighbors, because we had some serious concern, like you're sharing now. Back then, although they were gonna do huge, massive development in my one-way street, so there was really a lot of deprivation of quiet, enjoyment, and safety, and that's why I got involved in city council. But I can tell you, there were points in time when I did the numbers just like you did, and the city didn't have any money. They were so broke. Their budgetary ability to actually deal with anything that could have been an emergency or a safety issue or whatever was almost impossible. And they had no reserve. You know, they're like a household. She was talking about, you know, you do your household budget. Well, you try to keep some reserves. You try to keep a cushion that you have so you're not living paycheck from paycheck if you can avoid it. And we had administrations for years that I lived through that really did not even have an ability to live paycheck. But now maybe now we have too much money. Is that a big problem? I mean,
It's borrowed money.
It could be. It could be if it takes your money. And you know, the other thing is these municipalities, and I deal with a lot of them as a real estate broker. I've been at more city council meetings in more cities than probably most of the people sitting here, and for decades, 35 years. I can tell you that I've not seen a city that has as much provision and as much both philosophical and economic attention to the needs of having a balanced budget than here. And I think the mayor tried to make his point. Even though you may have valid questions about the balance sheets and whether or not they really are correct, I've never seen a staff, and I deal with all the staff here all the time. I've never seen a staff that's more concerned about having a balanced budget. And I've never seen any staff in any city, I mean, cities like St. Louis Park, there was absolutely no culture of public service there.
Well, I would say the amount of yelling that goes on at a council meeting and at this coffee is not exactly something I think should be a gold standard. Well, I don't disagree with you. You know, I mean, I'm so used to decorum, Robert's Rule of Order, having an agenda, structural, you know, methodologies of running through a meeting and accomplish the goals that everybody gets together for. Here, it's embarrassing. Here it's different. Oh, you can be as embarrassed as you want. I'm not embarrassed publicly when I come to these things. I'm an old Toastmaster, spent decades of speaking in front of people. I'm not trying to be adversarial to you at all. I'm just saying you were given an opportunity today that most citizens Please stop on that. I'm already going to say yes. I want to finish this conversation. Please stop honing on that same point.
And you said on the balanced budget, and there's two sides to a balanced budget. It's the revenue and the expenses. And just because you can raise the revenue, because you can get low-cost debt and your tax base has gone up, does not mean that you should take advantage of that and spend all the revenue.
Well, I don't disagree with you. That's what balanced budget is all about.
And that's something I want to interject here. You should go back and look at what the budget was like before Denny Walsh took over, because it was thousands of dollars in the hole. And now we're not in the hole, we have money put away.
Now we're millions of dollars in debt. Now we're millions of dollars in
debt. There's two sides to the balance sheet.
I mean,
the balance.
Great. Now we're millions of dollars in debt. Why do you agree?
1.9% interest.
The balance
was
still debt.
But the balance sheet is before. The balance sheet is really important. I don't demean that at all. But you have to look again, and I hate to use this term, but it's the best term I can come up with, and that's cause and effect. And when you have administration after administration after administration that didn't balance budget, that not only did not match balance budgetary costs, and here's what real rub is that I think you really need to get your head around.
This is 2024.
The quality of the infrastructure, the neglect, and the condition of much of...
We're not talking about any of that.
We are talking about years and years of poor management of infrastructure and equipment and things that are necessary to run a big city. And what happened finally is it all caught up. And it happened to have caught up at the time that Mayor Walsh became mayor. He inherited a lot of really a lot of worn out city mismanagement. And he's done a stellar job not only in correcting all those shortfalls, but he's done it in a budgetary manner that I think is that's responsible. Because the contract with the Long Lake Fire Department was expiring, and you know, I've been involved as a volunteer in a public appointing for about 7 years. That contract didn't just start getting looked at 2 years ago. The city had a plan.
Their point is it doesn't have to end, though. They brought up their two-pronged concerns, which are budget and also the cause. Why is this happening? So, but that doesn't have to end. Long Lake Fire's contract doesn't have to end. Orono can move into a shared services agreement, not just with Long Lake, but surrounding municipalities. And they've brought that up as well. So
yeah, and I think that's your fondest wish. But you know, I think
sorry, what was that?
I think that is your fondest wish. I mean, that's your focus. That's what you'd like to see.
No, I think that's not true. It's that it is a possibility, and that it's not being directly considered, because to her point earlier, the fire needs assessment that was presented by the fire chief, whose job is contingent on the Orono Fire Department. That was the solution that was brought forth. So there's the cause about why is this happening.
Conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory. That is a fact. It is a fact. It is a fact that he brought that forth, and that his job, his livelihood is dependent on the Orono Fire Department moving forward. And of course, his assessment is going to be that we should land in that regard. So they've brought that forth as well. They've brought forth also concerns that there has not been a public forum to discuss this outside of public forums that have been hosted by the city of Long Lake.
Long Lake City Council meetings.
I'm sorry, outside of the forums that have been hosted by the city of Long Lake. I think their frustration is what I heard today is that they are frustrated that their leadership, that their city leadership is not hosting forums where they can have open dialogue with community about the future changes for public safety and maybe even other areas. They've said that. You all ignore it repeatedly, and that is the problem. There's no citizen input. There is no cause of why this is happening, and the budget numbers are increasing. Service is declining. These are facts. And these are the concerns they're bringing forward, and you do this thing, you just throw stuff in the air and you just ignore them completely, and you just talk and never anything. I'm sorry, this is the first time I've spoken in 35 minutes.
No, but this is not a conversation, this is an oration.
I'm sorry?
Exactly right.
I'm sorry. I mean, exactly, you point your finger at me constantly, you're doing this. But sir, do some navel gazing. I realize that I am a loud person, and that I have a lot to say, and I'm a keyboard warrior according to Danny, and I'm an activist and stuff. But I care deeply about public safety. I care deeply about this community. I recognize that I don't live in Long Lake, but it is where I live. I live here. So I am concerned. I'm concerned about the public safety aspect of the decisions that they're making. I talk to firefighters daily, every single day, the firefighters that still serve this city. I listen to citizens that come through, and it drives me insane to sit here and listen to you say, I've attended every meeting more than all of you. I come to every single coffee. I speak at all these things. I do all of these things, and somehow you are an advocate for the city, but I'm an activist.
I'm a big fan of the city.
I understand that, but the finger pointing, sir. Where she's an activist because she's spoken at one meeting. She's an activist because she's come to 2 coffees, but you're an advocate. You have the utmost authority because you've been coming for decades and decades, but you're pointing fingers over at her as though she has said repeatedly, I'm asking questions for Sandy.
I'm just asking your question.
But you're adversarial to her point. You absolutely are.
I'm really curious on why with the fire chief writing a fire assessment sheet, whether or not the fire department should exist, why you question whether or not that was considered a conspiracy theory. Can you elaborate on that? Because that intrigues me. How is that even a conspiracy?
And the reason I brought Long Lake up is because...
No, I would you answer that question. I'm very curious on why you asked her.
I don't really have an opinion, and I don't have an agenda. I don't know how to answer your question.
Well, you asked her if it was a conspiracy theory, and I'm totally intrigued on how the fire chief writing a report whether or not a fire department should exist. Before he was the department, like there was a vote to have a fire department, a fire chief was hired, then the fire chief wrote a report whether or not a fire needs assessment should be done. And you said, oh, so do you think it's some sort of conspiracy? And I'm intrigued why that even, I don't understand that, why you even asked that.
Why is there a problem with it in the first place? I mean,
Because his job is
if the
dependent
police
on
chief
it.
had an agenda.
No, hold up. That is very intriguing to me. So as a businessman, would you have someone you hired potentially for a position and then have that person justify whether or not their entire department should exist? Like that doesn't even, I don't understand how that didn't seem slightly off. That's when I started paying attention, when a fire department chief for a fire department that didn't really exist, that a ladder truck was purchased before a fire department existed, then a fire chief was hired with the fire department not yet existing, then he wrote a report whether or not a fire department should exist. How that doesn't seem a little odd.
But the only way I can answer your question is with the history from the time I became a volunteer appointee as a planning commissioner, because that gave me access to be more internal. I mean, I'm just an Orono citizen sitting here talking to you. I'm not really
sure. I'm just asking about
trying to take my planning
specific
commissioner
question.
hat off as much as I can. But 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, when Mayor Walsh decided to run against the sitting city mayor, I supported him as a candidate. And I did that because he and another one of the city council members were such strong advocates for my neighbors and my neighborhood when I came as a citizen, long before I even applied to be a planning commissioner. And I wanted to make sure in vetting a new candidate that I didn't get the same kind of a mayor and city administrative, city council direction that we had before, because they seriously maligned and mistreated my neighbors and myself. I didn't want to see that. So I became a big fan of Denny Walsh to the degree that I wanted to learn more about how the city worked. So, you know, perhaps I became friendly, but what I did is I tried to utilize him as much as I could to educate myself about how Orono city politics and the internal functions work. I was made privy to the information at that time that the contract with Long Lake and its fire service would expire within a certain window of time frame. And it was something that needed to start being considered 8 years ago, because you just don't wait on a 25-year contract until the last year to figure out what you're going to do. And so, as you mentioned, as a businessman and trying to manage my business in a lucrative, sensible manner, I started asking, well, how are you going to manage this? I can tell you that there was the most transparent and overt sincerity that the contract with Long Lake could continue. I have to emphasize the word could, because it still was a bilateral negotiation based on the verse and chapter of the contract. And having a lot of experience and background with contracts, I read the contract. And I was very familiar with who wrote the contract and the former administrations that put it into place. It was one of the most poorly written contracts that I had ever read for municipal services. And what we have to clarify here, and I'm not trying to be argumentative with you at all, but it is a third-party vendor services contract. So it's hiring an outside entity, outside the structure of the municipal function of the city. It's a third-party contract. Now, if you look back far enough, Orono had contracts like that with the city of Whitesetta. That had some questionable and...
I guess I still, so all of that answer still didn't answer my question of, like,
the fire chief...
You're as a citizen of Orono, your thoughts on having a fire chief buying a hook and ladder before a fire department existed, hiring a fire chief for a department that didn't quite yet exist, and then having that fire chief write a report whether or not the fire department should exist, doesn't seem a little bit, as a citizen and probably as a businessman, doesn't that seem a tiny bit of a conflict of interest to have a person writing a report to recommend whether or not a fire department should exist? His job hinges 100% on whether or not a fire department exists.
That's the hearsay and conjecture.
Whoa.
Conjecture, sir.
How is
It's a
that
fact.
fact? He wrote a fire assessment report How is that hearsay? I don't understand that. Could
He
you
was
clarify
asked,
that?
he was asked to do that because unknown probably to you and not discussed very much in public, and I'm
Because it hasn't been a
glad
public
that Barbara
forum.
here is videotaping this. I'm gonna mention this as a material fact issue of my knowledge and understanding from 7 years ago and how it carried forward to what you just asked me. It was already negotiated and discussed preemptively a long time ago with the city of Long Lake by relatively new administrative heads of the city of Orono of how a contract renewal or extension could take place.
You're not answering my question at all.
I am.
No,
But
you're
you're
not.
not.
I'm asking you a
Don't you
very
think that
specific
it's a
question.
conflict of
Very
interest, yes or
specific.
no?
So very specific question.
No, the answer
So
is
you
no.
think there was
No,
zero
no, I
conflict
don't.
of
I think it's
interest?
all,
Okay,
it's
that's
all
your opinion.
hearsay, conjecture, and conspiracy theory, because I think that already the die had been
I think you should
cast,
have just left it as no, because then throwing in the words
because
conspiracy
the die
theory
had
makes
already
it,
been
makes it
cast
less
that the
valid.
city of Orono would likely build their own fire department, because administrative and executive decision-making at the city of Long Lake was of a mind to ask for things that were inordinately unreasonable
Like what?
to continue, like, they wanted to have veto power over budgetary expenses made by the benefactor of their entire existence. And the city of Orono said, we really can't do that. We're paying 87% of your budget. We cannot allow you to have
Well, now we pay 100% of the budget.
well,
That's
I guess so. So,
Well,
It's
and
a
also-
skyrocketed budget that we're paying 100% for.
well, whatever the number
Long Lake
is.
is also
you know,
funding
you're
it.
talking-
You
you're talking
diminished it.
about
You just-
numbers, I'm
you
talking
just
about
diminished
executive
it.
And you get
decision
nothing
making.
for that 100%.
No.
Pardon me?
You get nothing for that 100%?
Oh,
You
I'm
have a
not
new
saying,
fire
oh,
department.
you know what, I don't know how I suddenly got labeled advocate. I was just
Well, I
like,
think you should
how much
You
is this
have a
fire
vested
department?
interest
be
here.
proud of yourself,
Which
for
is
being
good.
an advocate for yourself, if not for the Orono citizens. I complimented her on her passion and her commitment to her cause a couple of times, and I sincerely meant that, and I still mean it. You should be proud of the term an advocate, whether you picture yourself or not.
I don't care what I'm labeled, honestly, but I just think it's a
Well,
little
the
bit
mayor
fascinating that
maybe
somehow.
misspoke, you know, he's not perfect.
Well, I'm not saying he's perfect, but I'm like, I think having questions asked, and there's very specific questions, but I don't see how, I specifically did 1 year. I didn't, and then I put in the CIPs for the previous
I get
years to make it a very, I mean, I don't know why you call that cherry picking, and then accusing me of not paying attention to public works. I mean, look at the last page, public works, it's 0 for all these columns in 2022. And then, you know,
Well, I
these
really
numbers went from $1 million to 15 million. That's 1,400% increase. That's kind of handy to have it be easy math.
And
And then, you know, 1,200% increase, a 600% increase, probably 300% increase.
well, you've done your homework, and I commend you for that. I think that's great. You know, when you go back and you talk to staff now, you know, you're really informed on those numbers, those printouts, that access that you had. Go back now and find out.
But
and
it's
see if
so
the-
patronizing for you to even
Well,
say
maybe
that
the
that
numbers-
way, because I'm
maybe
not
the
some
numbers
little
read a
lady.
lot
I've spent
better.
so much time on these numbers. I've communicated with them. I'm going back today because I don't want to have it thrown back in my face. I offered for you to meet with Adam and you turned it down. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back there and meet with them. But it's very patronizing. I cherry picked a year versus going through, it's a coffee. So we have a limited amount of time, and I wanted to know the why. Like, what made the budget be 800,000 more than the $1 million more it previously cost? Like, why is that? And an answer could be, it turns out a fire rescue vehicle, we budgeted it to be $650,000, but it turns out it's $1.2 million. So that's why our numbers are off. That would have been a perfectly reasonable answer. I might disagree with the whole idea,
Well,
but it's a reasonable
You'll see
answer.
it. You'll
But I've
find out.
already communicated with them, that's my whole point. So I wanted to make it a
How long ago
simple
was that?
line.
How long ago was that?
2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So maybe the 2025 numbers were in, but I wasn't doing 2025. I did 2024 because it's no numbers. It's no numbers. What it was estimated in 2022, what it was estimated in 2023, and what it currently is in 2024. Those are not future numbers. Those are numbers that are actually in place. So I wanted to get a why. And he could have said, you know, it turns out the fire blah, 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 blah was supposed to be X dollars and it actually cost this dollar. So that's why our budget went up $500,000 more than we thought. Or that's why it went up $750,000 more than we thought. That would be an answer, not accusing me of being an advocate or whatever. You know, like, I just wanted an answer. It could be an answer I wasn't happy to hear, but that's an actual legitimate answer saying, you know, we were going off numbers that were 2022 and because of, everybody always says because of the pandemic, blah, 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 but, you know, who knows, maybe the cost tripled on a particular piece of equipment that they budgeted for 2 years ago and now it's so much more expensive. That's an answer that answers why the budget is $800,000 more than the guess of $1 million more. You and I both don't know that, but that wasn't, I got no answers from that. That could have been an answer.
I'd love to find out from you.
I misunderstand this, but I think there's kind of two things here. There's the strategy and the tactical. And I think you're trying to understand the strategy, which is why we have this huge ballooning budget. And they're offering you tactical, like, yes, you can go back and talk to the person who actually works with QuickBooks and enters the numbers. But you want to know, and the question I want to know too, is really the strategy. Why is it that our budget is ballooning so much? And even though, and we can be, they're trying to reassure us that it's fully funded, etc. But our budget has just mushroomed the amount of money that we are spending in the city of Orono.
At least it looks like it on paper.
Oh, come on.
That's a fact is a
Talk
fact.
about conspiracy
A fact is
theories.
a fact. If you spent $1 million and now you're spending $5 million, your budget has gone up, you know, 5%.
But the printouts are the only empirical proof you have of that.
So what's your suggestion? You go through the
I'm
checklist?
suggesting
You
that
should ask the
they've
unicorn.
already had another meeting. If the mayor just mentioned this, I mean, they had a complete staff meeting with the city manager and the people that compiled these numbers.
I'm not questioning the people who compiled the numbers. I do not think there's a conspiracy back there in the back room where people are saying,
No,
I'm going to book it like this. Oh, here, let me slide some money under the table too. That's not going on. What we are here to ask about is the overall strategy, the why as to, you know, why we need to have a huge, just like we're setting ourselves up like this metropolis.
And boy, do I think that you are being very generous, focusing on just the actual numbers of this year, because if this continues in this trajectory, this department, there is an unknown number what it will actually cost, because they are going to have to get their public works buildings or build a fire department, get it up to code, buy more equipment, hire more firefighters. The operational expenses, the capital improvement expenses that come with that in future years are unknown. So what you're asking about in the increase is peanuts compared to what it is going to cost Orono citizens over the next 5-10 years, and they have no idea operationally how much it's going to cost. And when you compare how they've structured building this department compared to like the city of Plymouth or something like that, it's similar to how the city of Plymouth is structured, except for the city of Plymouth. Except for the city of Plymouth has about 2,800 calls per year, and Orono has 300 calls per year. And you are going to be having a department very similar size with firefighters sitting around doing a whole lot of nothing because they don't even get a call a day. So the costs are unknown, and the cost per call is going to skyrocket. And I want to say for the record that I am an advocate for more dollars being spent on fire service, because my husband is a firefighter and I know that there are shortcomings in fire service. I know that we need to spend more money on fire. But what is happening in nationwide trends, and it is widely known, is that smaller cities like Orono, Long Lake, Minnetonka Beach, that they come together, bringing fire service together to share resources, to share firefighters, to share cost, and to share training. So those are the things that would be fiscally responsible, they would be best for public safety, and it would be better for the community overall. And that's not even being considered here. Orono is going to balloon their fire department budget, and you have no idea what it's going to cost. And I'm sorry.
That was very well said.
Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, it kind of helped me get a better focus. You two, even though you're not collective necessarily, you have championed a cause that, you know, is commendable. And getting the numbers right and finding out if they balance. And then again, I have to ask sort of that bottom line question that has to do with cause and effect. Are you suspect of the fact that there is bad management to come up with bad numbers, or let me finish. If your concern is the budgetary increases, and those are not affordable to the public or for the citizenry of Orono, and you want to know the why. Why did the numbers get so big? Do you imagine, or are you just open-minded to find out whether it was mismanagement or malfeasance?
I don't think it's any of those.
It's none of that. It's not a strategy
but
of deciding that we need to go it alone and set up our own fire department. We need to have a massive public works building we're building up capacity for the next 35 years.
And saving countless hundreds of thousands of dollars recapturing to offset those expenses, because it's all in-house.
No.
All of the management. Have you been to the building?
Sir, come on.
Have you been to the building?
The cost that it will cost to retrofit that building to get it up to code to be a fire department.
I'm talking about the Public Works building.
I'm talking about the Public Works building too.
The new Public Works
yes,
building.
I'm talking about that Public Works building as well. Yes. The cost that it will cost to retrofit that to make it into a station, millions and millions and millions. It's not a coded building for fire service. There's no number on paper or for future planning that I am aware of, and I have been following this as well for a year and a half, that would project those numbers for these taxpayers. There isn't
We
one.
don't talk to firefighters as much often as you do. We're not integrated in the community and the culture of the fire department. But I talked to a lot of the firefighters over there. I didn't talk to one firefighter that wasn't enthusiastic and energetically engaged in.
Would you like me to give you some phone numbers? I'm happy to text them to you right now.
Well, here's what seems disingenuous to me. The flyer that Mr. Walsh put out for his campaign, and it says 100% fire support. I'll tell you exactly what it said, because I took
100% Orono fire supported, I think.
You know, it's just, so trusted and efficient government, or blah, 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 blah. Orono Fire Department, 100% supported. Well, it's not.
Well, the word is so ambiguous, because what does that mean? It's 100% funded, it's 100% supported by the community, it's 100% supported by the council, what does that even mean? It doesn't, it's this weird little bullet point on a thing. It doesn't mean anything to actual residents. And because, to her point, it is absolutely proven that it is not 100% supported by citizens.
Well,
because they come to the council meetings and they talk about it.
The reason that I kind of regressed into history and went back 7 years or 8 years with the Orono's evaluation of an upcoming expiration of a contract with Long Lake.
Even more time to do public input.
Right, and there was a lot of thought process, and there was a lot of dialogue, and there was a lot of communication, and there was a lot of unnecessary adversity that came into those negotiations, and it was fairly early on. But I think the most recent, when I say recent, maybe about the last 3 years, there were strategies in the negotiating process that became kind of unportable. It wasn't really a negotiation anymore. They were static demands by the Long Lake City Administration. It had nothing to do with the fire department or the firefighters. It had to do with the executive decision-making and the personalities involved in the Long Lake City Council. And
it's like you're trying to say, look at the shiny object over here.
What I'm trying to tell you is empirical fact about history of the negotiating process that precipitated the city of Orono making a capital decision that they had to have their own fire department independent of the Long Lake, so they didn't get held hostage by a couple of self-important city administrative people that decided they had to have it their way or no way, and when they couldn't get their way, they sued the city of Orono, their benefactor.
Okay, that's not what happened. They sued the city of Orono for violating their contract, and a judge ruled on it 3 separate times, said that they violated the contract.
I mean, I'm sure you've asked if I've read some of this stuff. I'm sure you've read the transcripts of the court document.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you started
you-
out
you
reading
might-
the bogus contract that they.
Okay, the contract might be a terrible contract, it's still a contract.
Right.
So it's like, okay, here's the contract, you have to do A, B, C, D, and the evaluation was, did you do A, B, C, D, or did you do A and D, whatever, and the verdict, it could be a terrible contract, I'm not saying it's not a terrible contract, it is the contract, and that's what it was based off of. Did you follow this contract? Whether or not it's a good contract, that both parties signed it, so that is the contract. The court system looked at that and said, you did not follow the contract, City of Orono,
Well,
you are in contempt of court.
I share
So-
the legal opinion of the legal counsel and the attorneys that represented the City of Orono, who, again, far beyond my knowledge of jurisprudence, felt that the decision-making and the enforcement from the court was improper, inappropriate, and overreach.
Well, the appeals will decide.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's
You know,
right.
like, so the appeals, I mean,
Absolutely,
that's its
that
own
part of
process.
jurisprudence I
But I
understand.
think having to be a citizen of a city that has lost a couple contempt of court, that's significant. Like that is why I started to look into this stuff, because I have concerns that the idea of a capital improvement plan is to do exactly what he just said. You know, okay, if this purse is gonna cost X dollars, let's spread this out over 10 years. Obviously, the purse is a terrible example. But then to have the numbers from 2022, 2023, and 2024 be so wildly different than the previous year makes it a little suspect on how reliable are these numbers. And then the number, I never got the why. And again, he could have said,
Yeah.
turns out our equipment is a lot more expensive, that's why it's
Yeah, your
800,000 over.
Your point's well taken.
You know, I mean,
don't
so I
disagree.
didn't get that, I got accused of being an advocate and all this like,
Yeah.
And see,
Fluff.
I just want to clarify the schedule, I believe, because I was under the understanding that this coffee went from 9 to 10.
yes.
And then Mayor Walsh left at about 9:45, and weren't you supposed to, be able to go back there, so.
Yeah, I'll go hustle back there
Okay.
now. But I
I'm just
mean,
concerned you're gonna ghost it.
Well, you're definitely a homework girl. I mean, I like this, that you do
Well,
this, and
it's-
thank you
it's
for bringing.
thankless,
Thank you coming with, prepared show and tell.
well, that's why, I mean, it's to say that I come back with the same
What-
thing is
maybe-
partially true, but I came with the actual City of Orono numbers to get specifics, and I didn't got no replies.
And she got no
I
answers.
If
got
you're,
teacher
if
notes.
you're entirely developing your opinion, your attitude about the City of Orono and the case, the judicial case with the judge and those decisions, do the same thing you did with this homework and read the transcripts.
I did, I have. And then I read the most recent one that I found was that the City of Long Lake was awarded attorney's fees of $81,000 something, and I read the whole thing. What Orono said was clerical work was being billed as lawyers' rates. You know, some of them, like I think little less than $5,000 was determined to be that Orono did not have to pay because those weren't whatever fees. I try to only read original sources. I don't try to go to like next door. I don't try to go from any like Facebook. I try to get none of my information from that's not original sources. So it's very insulting, some of the stuff that I was. I mean, it's silly to say I'm cherry picking. Of course, I can't go over an entire budget in a coffee hour. So I purposely picked our current year. And 2022, 2023, and 2024 capital improvement plan is wildly different, and the budget is so much over. He could have given me a simple reply that the equipment costs more, the staffing costs more, whatever it was, an actual answer instead of asking me if I looked at the public works or I'm not well informed. I mean, I specifically came to do a specific thing because it's a coffee, and I thought I could get a response. And I got a response of basically, you're cherry picking, you don't know what you're saying. It's insulting.
I wouldn't have picked those words, but can we talk again so I can find out what we can find out?
Sure, but I'm going back, as I've said, I've already met these people. I'm only doing it so I won't be accused of not meeting them yet. I haven't actually physically met them, I've already emailed, but.
And I don't, as I said, I don't think they're entitled to-
Brother John?
Yeah, that's good to see you.
Yep. Got the boat going back to the guy who put my umbrella
Yeah, well, there you go. That's a good thing.
And then of all things, my beautiful
I mean, I was doing
bought from the city
That's
wrecked, being left outside.
It's
So,
a
yeah,
development.
then I go, that's the insult to go down there last night for the
Oh,
first
okay,
time
yeah,
in a
that's
month.
not too far.
And the swallows made the best way to go.
Oh, okay.
Wow, and it's absolutely completely covered with bird shit.
No.
Yeah, which stains the fiberglass.
I'm afraid to look at mine because the interior
good discussion.
was going bad, so I paid the guy to do it.
I wondered a little bit about the difference between, you know, why Orono went for their own fire department. I had no opinion, but I learned a lot today. Good discussion.
Well, and the thing is,
Well, they wouldn't negotiate at all, so they didn't have a choice.
well,
No, they negotiated, they came up with a comment that was, you either do it our way or don't.
Yeah, right,
Exactly.
yeah, same
And when the
thing.
contract said, they did send me.
he's absolutely right, that's why I try to emphasize that.
That's what I come away with, that's the information and I'm thinking, I can't, because I had no idea why they switched, but now I have a clear understanding, sure.
I'm Dennis Libby.
I'm Claire.
Hi Claire, nice to meet you. This is my wife Ruby. And we've been on our residence for